So we are on the record, and the people of the state of California versus Tiffany Lee. And just give me one moment to bring my papers forward. And again, this is 16 SF 005932C. And if I could get council's appearances, please.
Ryan Mott for the people. Good morning, Your Honor.
Jeff Carr and May Moore from Ms. Lee, who is not present.
All right, thank you very much. And there was a request from Mr. Walsh for KGO to record this by way of, I take it, video. I granted the request based on the fact that there's really no public interest to preclude it at this point, and I take it there's no objection from either side.
Correct.
All right. Now, today was a couple of issues. Let me take up the issue by Mr. Walsh. He had requested two documents. First, a document, a transcript, and I sent both sides a copy of the letter, as well as a motion that had been sealed in regard to polygraph. At this point, I take it there's no objection to releasing both of those.
Correct.
Correct.
So the transcript of People's 13A, which is a transcript between Keith Green and Tiffany Lee, will be released, and Mr. Walsh will get a copy of it. We have already made a copy. I provided both sides a copy of that as well, a transcript. And you'll also be receiving the sealed defense motion regarding the former prosecution witness, Olivia Adela. All right? So that'll be, your requests are granted, and you should receive those forthwith. All right, now that takes us to the defense request for the return of Ms. Lee's property. And there's an opposition that was filed, and at this juncture, we had a very brief discussion in chambers. I know that the defense has provided a more recent list of items that they're seeking to be returned. What's your position, Mr. Avanti?
Your Honor, I think the defense also gave the court a copy of the list.
I do, I have it here.
Okay, just so the court knows, 17 and 39 were previously returned.
So 17 is the California identification card for Ms. Lee,
Yes.
and then 39 is the passports of Ms. Lee.
Correct.
Okay.
Those were the ones X'd on the copy.
Gotcha.
I X'd them because they were already returned.
Okay.
With respect to the other items that are on the list, I'll have the sheriff's office photograph and return 30 and 134.
Sorry, 30?
Yes, Your Honor, the checkbooks for Tiffany Lee. They're both
Checkbooks.
checkbooks.
And what else?
134.
All right, so the checkbooks, NB 15, checkbooks for Tiffany Lee, the district attorney will return them through the sheriff's office, and then the Bank of America checkbook, which is 134 for Ms. Tiffany Lee. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Any other items that you're agreeing to?
No, Your Honor, it appears the remainder of the items are all electronics, which I can agree to the release of for the reasons outlined in my motion. In addition, if we get to the point where the court's going beyond just the in custodia legis argument, I would need time to be able to ascertain that there is no one else with a property interest in the items requested here.
So what are you saying?
I think we should proceed with the motion, but if the court is going to go through item by item on these, as opposed to just dealing with them all as still continuing to be evidence that I'm entitled to, that the people are entitled to hold, I need time to ensure that these are in fact Ms. Lee's. There was more than one person living there at the time. I just discovered it was one.
All right, Mr. Carr.
The only thing not on the list is the automobile, the Mercedes automobile. It was mentioned in the motion. I didn't provide it in the list because we already discussed it.
And I think I conceded in my motion that that was adequately identified.
So, just a couple of things to.
Stand by. Are you conceding that the car can be returned?
No, I'm not.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
So after receiving Mr. Bonto's response, I consulted with my client, and I'm authorized to say openly, if they are actively investigating anybody, they can keep it all. That if they are actually involved in following up, as he said, we had said in the trial, that we didn't believe the proper suspect was on trial. Her first response is if they can actively use it in that, we are fine. If they are just holding it for some change in the universe of scientific evidence or something, I don't think that qualifies as a good reason. A couple of things just to supplement what the court staff may not know that occurred after this trial. Number one, Mr. we call him Adele, his real name is Mustafa Traore. Based on evidence that we developed and provided to the prosecution and ultimately provided to the federal authorities, he was arrested, prosecuted, convicted of passport fraud, is currently serving a sentence on that. That's of interest, but there's no longer any doubt his name is Mustafa Traore. Secondly, in that investigation, the U.S. attorney was able to translate a phone call between him and his brother in an obscure dialect in West Africa that we have been unable to do. In that way, only the federal government can do. They just sent to West Africa and got a translation. And it was very troubling, because in that translation, Mr. Mustafa Traore, otherwise known as Adela, changed his story to his own brother, saying, not that he murdered Mr. Green, but saying he was present physically when Mr. Green was murdered. And the U.S. attorney put that in the sentencing document because they were convinced he had much more culpability in this case than he had admitted to. So, armed with all of that, and the problem is, the person we believe, again, with the throwdown given by Mr. Bonner, the person we believe may very well have done this murder is Mr. Adela/Traore. And they have managed, the prosecution, to hamstring themselves by making an offer to him early, rashly, without vetting him, that we did. And now, they're saying they want to hold property of some value and personal property of some sentimental value on some, I don't know what, because the guy that we think if they were really investigating him, they guess have foreclosed even doing that. Now, there may be others, and we agree with that. So if they are saying that, remember that litany of other people that we all agreed were potentially involved by phones, that those people from Northern California that were all over the place, if they've actually got a lead on those people being possibly present or involved, our first response is please keep it. So if you can say that, that's great. If you can't, then we believe it's been a year, it's long enough, and under Trombetta and Youngblood, it's Trombetta versus Arizona, I forget, Youngblood versus Arizona, there is no problem with giving this evidence back, making photographs, documenting it. That sort of government response has been upheld now for 30 years. And the defense, in any potential case, retrying Mr. Bayat, trying one of those other folks that may have been involved, whatever, figuring out how to prosecute Mr. Traore, whatever that would be, there is no problem with the process that we are recommending, which is photographic. They've already done that. They want more photographs. If they want to download anything, we'll let them keep it. Until then, they can do any other testing they want with the vehicle that they haven't already done, but they seem to have done it all. We did too. So, and again, we've made an offer to turn over what we have to the prosecution about alternative suspects. There's a particular one out of state as to him saying and witness saying there may be other suspects. They didn't take us up on that. Whatever, that's their decision. But we want the property back within reason. Give them the time to copy or photograph or test or whatever they want. And that's just where it sits, and I think the law supports us in that.
All right, Mr. Avanto?
Yeah, I'm not going to make any comments with respect to any investigative steps in public. That aside, though, that's not the required showing. Ms. Lee was not the sole suspect in this case. She never was against Go-Defendant Bayat. The case is not final because it was a hung jury, as came out in the trial, and as I believe I conceded, there are at least two other individuals that have an expanded role that we are not currently able to charge due to insufficient evidence. As the court's aware, there are going to be improvements in forensic technique, and I think that's a large reason for this state of the law being that as long as the case isn't final, Ms. Lee is not entitled to return from that. Other than that, I rely on what's in my papers.
All right, matter submitted?
It is fine.
All right, I'm going to deny the motion in light of the fact that there is still an ongoing investigation. I'm not going to put the people to the paces of telling me what the status of the ongoing investigation is. However, I mean, that's the executive branch of government's role, and we're the judicial branch, so as a consequence, I'm gonna deny the motion. Obviously, it can certainly be brought again after some period of time. I'm not going to ascertain exactly how much time, but at some point, then it might be more probative. We have been in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic, so things definitely move slower than in the past. And with that said, I'm just gonna grant the denial, or issue the denial, and note that the exhibits that have been already articulated by stipulation will be released. All right?
And we have, well, I think we can work that out with Mr. Bonta. He's still making some determinations about some of them, and we'll work that out outside of court. If there's some disagreement on that, we'll come back.
And certainly if there are further stipulations, that can be done without further order of the court.
Got it.
All right?
Okay, okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.